Well, so I hope everyone is okay today. It's been a very rough
Mhm.
week or so here in America and around the world, really. And yeah, so I hope everyone's been taking care of themselves in the best way they can.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a great time to talk Dhamma. And speaking of protecting oneself and our
Speaking of
mind,
defilements,
yeah, speaking of defilements, we
Yeah.
have the examination of our minds, which we thought was appropriate, because we do also live in a time where it's very easy to finger point. I mean, I think it is part of human nature. People have been doing it forever, I have no doubt. Um, but it's just, I just think everything is amplified in this era of social media. Um, so yeah, we're looking at our own minds, which is really quite a task. Um, Gary, you look like you're in some garden paradise.
I'm in Jetta's Grove.
All right. I thought you were in the squirrel. I thought you were in the squirrel park, but okay.
Squirrel Sanctuary. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So just in the nick, Gary. It's good to see you. Um, we're talking about our minds, which is good. I think this is the first sutta that we have read out of the Anguttara Nikaya so far. And Stephen, are you able to let people in as I'm sharing my screen?
yes, I think
Okay,
so.
excellent. Thank
So
you.
we skipped all the way to the Book of Tens. We
Yes, we
started
did.
at 10. Maybe we'll work our way backwards. Actually, it
Ste-
goes to 11.
Stephen, since you mentioned that, why is the can you just explain, since this is our first reading out of the Anguttara Nikaya, maybe it'll be the first that anyone has ever read out of this text, and why do they have the Book of the Ones, Book of the Threes? Can you just give us a brief overview?
Yeah. So it seems as if when the original compilers of the Pali discourses that were recorded by memory, of course, not written down, they were sort of slotted into various collections. And it's hard to even imagine, but they were, in fact, all mental collections, not books, not written texts. And one of the things that was used as a thematic device was numerical. It seems as if the ancient Indians were very much into um, categorization and numbering and all that kind of stuff. And so they came up with the idea that, and this is not, I think, limited only to Buddhist texts. It happens in various places, but so it goes from 1 to 11, and the Book of Ones always talks about one thing. There's one thing that's this, and then there's the twos. There are two that you should do, and 3 and 4, and onward up to 11. And so our reading is from the Book of Tens, and it's interesting because it seems in a way very much related to two very famous groups of five, namely the five hindrances and the five spiritual faculties. But this is a sort of a mixture of two. We'll look at how they are. And what's interesting about the Anguttara Nikaya is that the groups of them don't seem very much thematically related. They seem related by number, but not so much by content. And so it can seem, as you read through it, somewhat of a random collection. But Regina and I were very fond of this one because it seemed rather apropos and interesting, because it's another way of sort of categorizing and looking into one's mind and seeing what's there.
Great. So with that,
Mhm.
he should read it, and I want to go ahead and call on Suran. And
Oh, thank you.
well, we're not going to break with tradition today. So
Okay.
if you could just read up to the part where it says wholesome qualities, that first big paragraph.
Okay, sure. One's own mind. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling in Savatthi in Jetta's Grove and Athapindika's Park. There the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, those bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, a bhikkhu who is not skilled in the ways of others' minds should train. I will be skilled in the ways of my own mind. It is in this way that you should train yourselves. And should I go on?
Yes.
Okay. And how is a bhikkhu skilled in the ways of his own mind? It is just as if a woman or a man, young, youthful, and fond of ornaments, would look at her or his own facial reflection in a clean, bright mirror or in a bowl of clear water. If they see some dust or blemish there, they will make an effort to remove it. But if they do not see any dust or blemish there, they will be glad about it and their wish fulfilled. They will think, how fortunate that I am clean. So too, self-examination is very helpful for a bhikkhu to grow in wholesome qualities. Want me to go on?
No, let's pause there. Regina, if you're talking, you're muted too. But I think we can stop there for a second. Regina, you're back.
Yeah, I didn't know I had muted myself.
Self-mutal. Anyway, I think it starts in a very interesting way and perhaps a somewhat provocative way, because it says, if you can let the top of the text show, yes. A bhikkhu who is not skilled in the way of other minds should train. I should be skilled in the ways of my own mind. This could sound somewhat snarky, perhaps, but I think also we can read this in a literal way as well, because it is said often that the Buddha and other people were able to read other people's minds. So it's not just like, well, take a look at yourself in the mirror first before you lay that on me kind of thing, although that might be part of it. And it's also said that the ability to read others' minds can only come with a very high degree of mental purification and concentration. So with that being said, of course, the vast majority of people need to start with their own minds and figure out what's happening in there before they can go on to read other people's minds. And I think it's a beautiful and very relevant simile about the looking into a mirror and how we all spend so much time admiring or criticizing our appearances and being unhappy with them or being proud with them. And it seems like we spend less time probably investigating the contents of our minds. And so, of course, we know that a big part of mindfulness and the big part of the mindfulness sutta is an investigation of the contents of one's mind, the nature of one's mind, and also more specific contents of one's mind. And so we're going to see here a list of 10 things, 10 suggestions that we look out for, 10 things that we should try to be aware of happening in real time. Are they there or are they not there? So maybe we can go ahead and have a look at these 10.
I just wanted to also throw something out there. When the person looks in the mirror and they see, that they're okay, there's no dust, there's no blemish, their thought is not, yeah, I'm clean, but you have something going on and it's not pretty. That's not where the mind goes. The mind goes, it's good that I'm clean. And it just stays with the self. There's not this outward, I clean my side of the street and yours is still dirty. And I think that's important as well. So the next couple of paragraphs. Maybe someone who hasn't read for a while.
Maybe we should just read one at first.
One at first, then we'll do one at first.
One paragraph.
One paragraph. Okay, I'm calling someone now. I'm going to call on Sarah.
I knew it. Because I'm so trained in the ways of others' minds that I was like, Regina's going to call on me. No, just bad luck. Okay. All right. One should ask oneself, 1, am I often given to longing or without longing? 2, am I often given to ill will or without ill will? 3, am I often overcome by dullness and drowsiness or free from dullness and drowsiness? 4, am I often restless or calm? 5, am I often plagued by doubt or free from doubt? 6, am I often angry or without anger? 7, is my mind often defiled or undefiled? 8, is my body often agitated or unagitated? 9, am I often lazy or energetic? 10, am I often unconcentrated or concentrated?
Thank you, Sarah.
And maybe we should say, for those who don't have the book and so therefore don't have access to the footnote, which ends this paragraph, that it tells us there that there is a Chinese Agama version of this sutta that has slightly different qualities, and it's sort of a slightly different mixture of the hindrances and the 5 spiritual faculties. And so it seems like there are plenty of these hindrances or defilements that one can find, and we shouldn't probably limit our investigation to these 10, but this is probably a great place to start. And so probably many people will see that the first 5 correspond quite closely to the 5 hindrances. And the 5 hindrances are said often to be hindrances towards concentration, but I think they can also equally be said to be hindrances towards a good mind. In other words, we shouldn't only aim to eliminate the 5 hindrances when we're sitting on a meditation cushion. These are something that we should try to eliminate as much as possible at all times, and also, of course, be mindful of their presence, or they're mindful of their absence. And then the next group is a bit different, and we see some of the spiritual faculties, but voiced in a different way. And I would say that because I kind of made my own list here, and I noticed that faith, mindfulness, and wisdom are the 3 spiritual faculties that are absent in this list, and the 2 that are there are 9 and 10, I think. So that would be corresponding to energy and concentration. So
Stephen,
it's interesting. Yep.
for the people who haven't been studying with Bhikkhu Bodhi or Bhikkhu Analayo for years, could you please just give a brief intro into the Chinese agamas, since you mentioned that?
Well, I don't have that much to say, but we know that the Pali Canon is said to be the most early and the most complete collection of the Buddha's teaching that we know of. But there is a very close second, which is this, what's called Agama, and it's in Chinese, and it's a sort of an analog of the Pali Canon in Chinese. I'm not sure of the whole history of how it came to be and came to be written out in Chinese, and how it sort of transferred from Pali or some early Indian language into the Chinese language. But what's interesting is that it corresponds very closely, which also kind of says a lot about the power of memory of people that were traveling around and then were separated for perhaps hundreds of years and continue their independent traditions of memorizing and reciting texts, and then eventually wrote them down, and then they line up quite a bit when we can compare them today. But of course, as we've said for this one, they don't line up exactly, but they have a lot of correspondence, and they're very interesting to look at to see how they differ.
Thank you. Okay, so next paragraph. Volunteers before victims.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, super.
If we're starting with if, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If by such a self-examination a bhikkhu knows, I am often given to longing, given to ill will, overcome by dullness and drowsiness, restless, plagued by doubt, angry, defiled in mind, agitated in body, lazy and unconcentrated, he should put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, in defeat. I can never say that word.
Indefatigability.
Yeah, it's the accent. Indefatigability, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to abandon those same bad, unwholesome qualities, just as one whose clothes, oh my gosh, sorry. I'm sorry, everybody, I have an alarm. Just as one whose clothes or head had caught fire would put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, indefatigability, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to extinguish the fire on his clothes or head, so too that bhikkhu should put forth extraordinary desire, effort, zeal, enthusiasm, indefatigability, mindfulness, and clear comprehension to abandon those same unwholesome qualities.
Thank you. And someone to finish us up. How about Gary, since you we missed you last time?
Sure. But if by such self-examination a bhikkhu knows, I am often without longing, without ill will, free from dullness and drowsiness, calm, free from doubt, without anger, undefiled in mind, unagitated in body, energetic and concentrated. He should base himself on those same wholesome qualities and make a further effort to reach the destruction of the taints.
Great. And here we are. And we had quite a metaphor in that last paragraph that James was reading in regards to if any of us find these hindrances, how we should react. And that is, we should react as if our hair were on fire or if our clothes were on fire. You can
They're
only
pretty
imagine.
bad.
That's pretty bad.
This is not sort of like, well, tomorrow when you feel more rested, start working on it. It's not like, well, next week when you go on vacation, you may consider having a look at this. It's also interesting, I think, at the very end, he says that this is not the end of the practice. That if one is able to find that they don't have these things, then they go on to something else further. So this is sort of not the end of the practice, but maybe even the beginning of a deeper practice, the destruction of the taints, the destruction of the asavas, the more deep-rooted, the influxes that really need to be rooted out.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because a lot of the things that are being mentioned here, ill will, drowsiness, calm, agitated, these things are very coarse and easily identified. But then, if you've been in the practice for a while, you notice that some of these things attenuate. And then with their attenuation, you can begin to notice other subtler states of mind that need tending to.
But that being said, I think these many of these are very easy to sort of go with the flow with. In other words, it seems like many of these are easy to accept as just, well, that's how it is, and that's who I am, and that's because of the circumstances I find myself currently, and that's why these things are here. And we seem to think of them as sort of external to us. This is, I'm annoyed because of this annoying thing. It's not me. I'm drowsy because I'm not entertained sufficiently, but it's not really, my fault. And I think, and the mind tends to slip over these things quite easily and not have a willingness to accept them as problems that can be changed, as opposed to things that are just arising by circumstance and not really part of one's makeup, so to speak. And I think it does take quite a bit of mindfulness and energy to be able to see these things arising and passing in real time, instead of just sort of thinking about them as interesting things, but to see them pop up and see them disappear is actually very difficult, I would say. And that's probably why we start practicing this on a meditation cushion, because in a controlled environment, it's somewhat easier, but it's probably much harder to do it on the subway or in a workplace where people are sort of yelling at you or pushing you, and the mind just kind of rolls on, and it becomes very difficult to have any sort of presence of mind.
So yesterday I was going for a walk, and before I went on the walk, I'll make a confession. I had a quick conversation with a friend via text that always ends up well. And on my walk, I was thinking, dang it, she's so rude on text. And then I was thinking of a response to formulate, because, I was feeling, what is this hindrance? Oh yeah, anger. I was feeling anger. And so I wanted to formulate a text that would seem nice, but it just had a bit of a zing to it, sort of like lemon juice on a paper cut. But being aware of that and knowing my mind, and it's really, really uncomfortable sometimes too to be with the mind. As Stephen says, it's hard enough doing it, on a retreat in a cushion. Sometimes that can be just maddening. But in real life, it really where the rubber hits the road. Not to write that response, that text response, or not to say that thing to the person who pushed you into the subway and said, make room, or tried to get on, won't let you onto the freeway on the on-ramp. I'm trying to be not too New York centric. But, that's where it's, as Stephen says, that's where the practice really makes itself known, I think, as well.
Can anyone else share any sort of success stories about dealing with these things?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Not really a success. As I look at these 10 things, I think I can recognize when I'm angry or when I'm longing or when I'm agitated or lazy. I recognize all of those things. But thinking, is my mind often defiled or undefiled? How do I, I think I'm unaware of in the ways in which my mind is defiled.
Yeah, well, it takes a certain degree of understanding what being defiled means, right? It seems that that term seems slightly weird to me, because that term seems somewhat of a catch-all for the others. So it would seem that having doubt, having ill will would be a type of a defiled mind. I wonder if maybe I don't know this, but I wonder if it maybe points to sort of a more amorphous feeling of something not quite right, an unease of the mind, but maybe not so easily identifiable as a specific defilement. I don't know. You know, sort of a general, I'm just not feeling very good about this. I don't feel happy. I don't feel calm. I don't feel at peace, but I don't really know why. I don't know quite what's bothering me. And perhaps that specific number, I guess that's number 8, might be talking about, but I'm not quite sure. It's an interesting one.
I also want to say that being aware that you're not aware is a really good place to be, Diane, because you're aware that you're not sure that you know when your mind is defiled. I mean, that's a starting place. It's a great starting place. I think it's much more preferable than someone who's like, my mind's not defiled. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any of that. So then, see, that person is going to have a much tougher time. So good going.
I think the word often also shows me how tricky my mind is, because I read that and I think, oh, it's just occasional. I'm good. It's not often. I don't have to worry about any of this, right?
Right.
Oh, good. I made Diane laugh. Yay.
Well, it seems almost scary because, at least speaking personally, when I start looking at these things closely, it becomes such a rapid cascade of changing qualities in somewhat of an unpleasant way that it becomes aversion arises even just to that there's not you don't necessarily like looking at it. We need a sort of a timeout because of the nature of the mind to be constantly flickering in that way. Just looking at that can be unpleasant. And so somehow some sort of peace or acceptance has to happen about the ability to look at one's mind without just getting bummed out or freaked out or discouraged.
I'm sorry.
Just a question. I don't know if I am.
We can hear you.
Sophia, we can't really hear you very well.
You cannot?
Now it's better.
Okay, let me write down. I was thinking about mindfulness, but also what I remember yesterday, listened to Dalai Lama talking to the youth. And it called my attention, for example, in Dalai Lama, that for him, he was asking for debate. It is okay, this is good. When he were studying, not only practicing, but studying what Buddha taught, it was very important for him to underline that this is very important, the discussion, in order to clarify. Then for me, based in this point of view, doubt is okay. Doubt is necessary in order to go to the analytic meditation. I was thinking about, analytic meditation when I do mindfulness. For example, when I practice mindfulness, it's okay if I am familiar with what is happening to me in some ways. I have this awareness of my mind, and I am familiar with what is happening first before knowing why. Then it is very interesting that these things call my attention. I love doubt, I love debate, discussion. I love to be aware of the mind without judging this. This is mindfulness. But at the same time, I love to the other part that is the question that the other, the poems we read before keep in my mind is we have to be far from the society in order to reach these qualities that he's talking about, and also to continue growing in the qualities that are the opposite, for example, to the sleepiness or drownness or lack of interest or impure or nostalgia, these kind of things that kill our mind and kill us, it's very important to go far from the society, because for us, we notice that as much as we are in the daily activities, it's very hard for us to control our mind because there are a lot of stimulus and we have to live with them. I don't know, it's very interesting for me, and the thing that most called my attention of this text is what happened to people that reach this concentration and those qualities. They have to be in the way and continue. Then it's a continue growing, but what is the best environment? The best environment to grow. It's like, for me, I have to be a yogi to do so, or to be separately for the society. It's a question that had to be with the first text that talk about men that were took from the families, and women that follow them too, and what happened with the family that were without the complete members. Then this is always a question for me.
So I think
Well,
that's okay. Go ahead, Stephen. You first.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I mean, because a lot was brought up. I mean, first I will say that debate is really a big, big part of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I do want to emphasize that I think having questions or wondering or analyzing is kind of different from how the Buddha is explaining doubt. So there might be a bit of confusion, I'm not sure, in terms of that. However, I will say the idea of where one should live and how one should live in terms of the practice, that's a big, big one. And I wrestle with that myself a lot. And yeah, it's a major point, especially in our modern society. There's a reason why, you know, retreat centers generally are in bucolic settings, for sure. Stephen, what were you going to say?
Very much what you said. It would seem that the surroundings that one chooses to be in is a personal choice, and things are different for different people. Everyone has to figure out what works best for them, what they are capable of doing. On the one hand, a very quiet bucolic setting might be ideal for someone. Someone else might go crazy because it's just too quiet and too isolated, and they just don't do well in that kind of environment. So it's certainly a personal thing. I don't think we can make a blanket prescription here. In terms of the word doubt, I think one of the reasons why it's one of the 5 hindrances to, say, concentration is because it's a sort of a disturbance of the mind. This is not just talking about intellectual curiosity or wanting to know, wanting to clarify a point, but a doubt is just not sure what you're doing. Am I meditating? Am I not meditating? Should I be doing something else? Am I doing this right? All this kind of doubt, when one is sort of trying to quiet the mind, can be actually detrimental to good concentration because it won't let the mind relax. It's very hard to let go if you're constantly wondering if you're doing something right or if you're doing something wrong. So, I mean, that's a quick answer for doubt. And in fact, in the Pali, the opposite of doubt is something called tina vichikicho, which in a literal sense means having crossed over doubt. So in other words, having some sort of certainty about it. This is what I should be doing. This is the right way. This is correct. I'm no longer wondering and worrying. But I was wondering if Vimala might have something also to say about this. No, I'm afraid you're muted, I am. Okay.
About this or something I was going to say just before?
Both.
Oh, okay. About doubt, I agree with what you're saying, Stephen. But my point's going to a translation that Panasaro Bhikkhu gave, I looked at his translation, and it's interesting because you and I talked a little bit about his translations, but the one about what Diane had the question about, which was, where is it?
I think number 7. Yeah.
It's my mind often, what is it?
Defiled or undefiled. It's a little lower.
And he says, with soiled thoughts or unsoiled thoughts, with my body aroused or unaroused. So it seems real simple to me what Thanasaro's translating it to be like, with a dirty mind or not. I mean, he's really attaching it to lust.
And how would you say that would be different from, say, number 1, longing or without longing?
Well, I just think the one about the mental, is my mind often defiled. I think the longing is more like sensual desire, more just or wanting wanting anything, like longing for a piece of fudge or something. And 7, so when I read Thanissaro, it seems easy. He's talking about a specific kind of mental defilement. But the other translation, I'll just say, is my mind often defiled or undefiled.
Yeah. The Pali term literally means a mind with defilement. So
lots of those.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Anybody else?
I had a thought that, well, just generally, in this day and age, however you want to look at it, back in the Buddha's time, and even, after that, there was no TV, there was no cell phones, radio, etc. So we live in a very sort of agitated time anyways, because we're exposed to so much. So unless you're going to, go off into solitude, I think it's a struggle. When I see some of these things, ill will and anger to me right now are playing out, across the country. And it's a difficult thing to overcome because it's hard to know what to think at times. If you do nothing and try to ignore certain events, that isn't going to be a good answer. But at the same time, you have to be able to look at these things very neutrally and just try to solve problems without, being angered, for example. So I just think we're constantly surrounded today by so much input, and it's a balance on what you have to do to retain that sense of calm and quiet. Just a thought.
Can I say something there? Because I was really struck by, is my body often agitated or unagitated? And for me, that's become a very big thing that I find with all that's going on, especially, that my body feels agitated. Like I feel this anxiousness and nervous energy. And I have to, I'm beginning to try to catch it, that I don't respond to something with this agitated, and have it come from this sense of agitation. And I didn't see it so clearly before. And then when I see it in the words as something, specifically stated to watch out for, I find it very helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think it might be worth pointing out that the Buddha does not seem to acknowledge this mind duality that probably almost all of us have grown up with, thinking that the body and the mind are two distinct things. It would seem as if he takes the body-mind as one thing. And so it's important to acknowledge that the body is agitated because it's a part of the whole. And so if the body is agitated, the mind is agitated. It's not a separate thing. I also would like to point out just quickly that it is certainly possible to be concerned about events and care about things that are unjust and not be angry. Because I think in common parlance, when we say we're angry about something, we disagree with it. But this is a different kind of anger. It's not a disagreement or a judgment that something is unjust. But here, anger is much more of an emotional, negative quality. It's not just that is wrong and I'm angry about it. But it seems like the Buddha is saying those things can be separated out.
Thanks.
I say another thing, that duality is the nature of mind, the nature of languages. I was so surprised when you told like 3 weeks ago, maybe, that it was not present, it was not past in that language, in the language that Buddha wrote, or these texts were presented. And then we were talking all the time about duality, because this is the way we think, this is the way we express ideas. And then I guess that this pick one of the part of the duality, not let this movement of the mind and the body is because the two parts, that is the nature of human being, the way we think, the way we understand, the way we talk. It's very interesting. For this reason, maybe it's very difficult to select and stay in one of the part of the duality.
It is an interesting thing to think about. I believe Sue Ann wanted to share as well. Sue Ann?
I'll just say one thing quickly. It's getting late. I think Stephen kind of cleared it up for me. I was going to bring up about the anger that's going on now across the world. I mean, this situation has been going on for 400 years, but it's really coming to a head. And I'm angry about the way that other people are treated. And I thought that would be an okay thing to be angry about. I mean, I didn't stay in anger. I can't go on public transportation yet, so I tried to get an organization where there'd be a demonstration in my neighborhood, and I was able to find one. And when I went out and I kept my social distance and everyone wore masks, I wasn't angry. I was actually happy to be there to support George Floyd. I can't explain it. I wasn't happy about what happened to him, but I just was glad to be on the side of what I thought was going to be a change for the good. So if I had any question, it would be, isn't some anger acceptable? Not that we don't get angry, not to get angry at every little thing that happens and hold on to it, but isn't there some justification, and isn't it all right and acceptable to be angry over such injustices?
I think that first of all, it's not a judgment of like, is this okay or is it right? Am I right or wrong? But really, it's what is skillful, what is unskillful, what's helpful to the situation. I don't want to speak for the Buddha, but I think that for me, anger spurs me to action. Okay, I will admit to that. But I think I think being able to be spurred to action without having that base emotional reaction and just saying that's not wise, or that's not right, or that's not compassionate. To me, I would prefer to come from that place, but I'm not there yet. So I will admit that. And there are times when I find tuning into my emotion state helpful. I don't know if Stephen wanted to say anything, and I know that Leonardo wanted to say something, and then it looks like we may have to skip Metta.
Leonardo, do you have something to say in our last moment?
It's just a quick question that does not need to be answered now, and even it's up to you if you think it's possible. I am seeing this into the practical side as a practice. If I just sit and think about these 10 items, I want to get them right to ensure that I'm not going into the wrong direction. So if possible, and if you think it would be helpful, if you could later in the Facebook or email send us the literal translations from the Pali of each one of these. And unless they are, you think they are right as they are. So that was my only.
Yeah, okay, we could. I mean, I think it's possible to overthink this. I think the translations are probably good, and you can also look at other people's translations. But I think the most important thing is to realize that we can see these qualities arise in our minds as they arise, and it's not enough to just see them, but also to have this judgment whether they're wholesome or unwholesome. So there's two things happening. There's sati and sampajanya. There's mindfulness and clear comprehension. We know something's happening and we understand, is this good or bad, basically? Is this a wholesome mindful state or is it not? Should I stop doing this or is this right? That kind of thing. So it's not just a bare knowing. It's not just, oh, I'm angry. Okay. No, it's I'm angry and I'd rather not be. Or this anger is not helping me. This anger is hurting me. So there's at least two kinds of guiding principles that seem to be happening here. But I think we're out of time.
Yes.
It's interesting how just a list of 10 things can spur a lot of conversation.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, there's a lot packed in there for sure. And especially as you said, and we seem to always say with each sutta that we discuss, it is apropos of the time. So, you know, it's on people's minds. I'm going to go ahead and flash the link up. Whoops. I'm going to do it again. Put the link up for anyone who may desire to offer dana. Not required. Your presence is priceless to us. Unfortunately, we don't have time for metta, but looking around at everyone in the little Zoom boxes does fill me with metta. I'm really happy to see all of you here. I'm right now, I'm looking at all of you and I'm offering you metta. So I also like, Sophia, what you said, Dharma is, the act of talking about Dharma is, I think it's a big part of Dharma. So, you know, that's why I truly believe that what we're doing here is very important, and I'm really glad to share it with you. I have picked a sutta, and I don't know if Stephen even knows yet. Oh, he doesn't. He looks surprised. Okay.
Oh, no, not that one.
All right, we'll let you guys know a little later on, but it's already picked, and it should be up tomorrow. Really, really, I'm getting quicker with this.
Am I having an unwholesome mental state?
Oh my gosh. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. And for those of you who can come Thursday, we'll be happy to see you. And for those of you who won't, we'll see you next Sunday, and have a great, great Sunday night, you all.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.